The sun shone bright in the blue sky over London. It was a perfect summer day. People walked on the streets, some going to work, others shopping or meeting friends. The busy part of the city was full of life and noise. Down the main street came a group of 5 bikers. Their motorcycles were loud and black. The man at the front was called Mike. He was tall with big arms and a thick beard. He wore a leather jacket with many patches. His eyes were hidden behind dark sunglasses. Mike and his friends had come from the rough part of town. They didn't often visit this fancy area where rich people shopped. Here, the stores had expensive clothes in the windows. The cafes served coffee that cost too much. Mike didn't like these places or the people who went to them. "Look at them," Mike said to his friend Tom, who rode next to him. "All these rich people think they're better than us." Tom laughed and nodded. The other 3 bikers followed close behind. They all belonged to a group called the Road Kings. Everyone in their part of town knew not to mess with them. Mike slowed his bike as they reached a row of nice shops. Outside a coffee shop with big glass windows, 2 small dogs were tied to a post. They were Yorkshire Terriers, tiny dogs with long silky fur. They had blue ribbons on their collars and looked very well cared for. "Someone loves those little rats," Mike said with a mean smile. He parked his motorcycle and got off. The other bikers did the same, watching Mike with interest. They knew when Mike smiled like that, he was planning something bad. The dogs wagged their tails when they saw Mike walk over. They were friendly and used to people petting them. Mike bent down like he was going to be nice to them. "Aren't you cute?" he said in a fake, sweet voice. Then he looked around to see if anyone was watching. A few people walked by, but no one was paying attention to him. Quick as a snake, Mike's foot shot out and kicked one of the dogs. Not hard enough to cause real damage, but enough to make the dog yelp in pain and fear. The other dog backed away, but couldn't go far because of its leash. Mike laughed and kicked the second dog too. "Just teaching these rich people's pets some manners," he said to his friends who were now laughing with him. A woman walking past with shopping bags saw what happened. She stopped and stared at Mike with angry eyes. "What are you doing?" she asked in a shocked voice. "Those aren't your dogs." Mike turned to her, standing up tall to look scary. "Mind your own business, lady. It was just a joke." The woman looked like she wanted to say more, but she was afraid of the big man and his friends. She hurried away, looking back with worried eyes at the poor dogs who were now cowering and shaking. Inside the coffee shop, people sat at tables drinking expensive coffee. They talked and looked at their phones. No one had noticed what happened outside yet, but someone was about to. In the corner of the shop, a strong-looking man with no hair was waiting for his coffee. He wore a simple black t-shirt that showed his muscular arms. His face was serious as he checked his phone. Few people in the shop had realized that the famous action movie star, Jason Statham, was standing among them. The barista called out, "Large black coffee for Jason." As Jason walked to get his coffee, he heard a strange sound from outside. It was the sound of his dogs yelping in pain. His head turned sharply toward the door. Something was wrong with Max and Bella, the 2 Yorkshire Terriers he had owned for 5 years. They were more than pets to him. They were family. Jason's eyes narrowed as he put down his coffee and walked toward the door. Nobody who knew Jason would mistake the look on his face. It was the same look his movie fans had seen many times, right before all hell broke loose. Jason Statham pushed open the coffee shop door. The bell above it made a small ding sound. He stepped outside into the bright sunlight. His eyes quickly found his 2 small dogs. They were still tied to the post, but now they were shaking. Max, the older dog, had his tail between his legs. Bella, the younger one, was trying to hide behind Max. Jason felt anger rise in his chest. Something was wrong with his dogs. They were usually happy and playful. Now they looked scared. He looked around and saw 5 men standing near their motorcycles. They were laughing and pointing at his dogs. One man, taller than the others with a thick beard, was standing closest to the dogs. He was the one doing most of the laughing. Jason watched as the man pretended to kick at the dogs again, making them flinch and cower more. "Hey," Jason called out in his deep voice. "What's going on here?" The tall biker turned around with an annoyed look on his face. He was ready to tell whoever was bothering him to get lost. But when he saw who was speaking, his face changed. First came surprise, then worry. Mike knew who Jason Statham was. Everyone knew the famous action movie star. Mike had even watched many of Jason's movies. In those movies, Jason always played tough men who beat up bad guys. Now, seeing the real Jason Statham walking toward him with an angry look, Mike felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "Nothing's going on," Mike said quickly. He tried to sound brave, but his voice came out higher than normal. "Just looking at these dogs." Jason walked up to his dogs. He bent down and checked them carefully. Max licked his hand, seeming happy to see him. Bella was still shaking a little. Jason untied their leashes from the post and stood up, holding both leashes in one hand. "These are my dogs," Jason said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. "And I think you were doing more than looking at them." The other bikers had stopped laughing. They moved back a little, giving Jason and Mike space. They could feel that something bad was about to happen. "The lady who walked by a minute ago," Jason continued, "she told me she saw you kick my dogs. Is that true?" Mike's face turned red. He looked at his friends for help, but they were all looking away now. No one wanted to get involved. "It was just a joke," Mike said, trying to smile. "I didn't hurt them, just playing around." Jason's face didn't change. "A joke? You think kicking small animals is funny?" People walking by had started to slow down. Some stopped to watch. They could sense the tension in the air. A few took out their phones and started recording. "Look, man," Mike said, backing up a step. "I didn't know they were your dogs." "So it would be okay if they belonged to someone else?" Jason asked. His voice was getting quieter, which somehow made it more scary. Mike didn't know what to say. If he said yes, he would sound like a bad person. If he said no, it would be like admitting he did something wrong. I'm sorry, okay," Mike finally said. He looked around again at his friends. Tom was by his bike, keys in hand, looking like he wanted to leave. The other three were also backing toward their motorcycles. "Sorry isn't enough," Jason said. He took a step closer to Mike. Now they were standing face to face. Jason wasn't as tall as Mike, but he was much stronger looking. His arms had muscles from years of working out and doing his own movie stunts. The coffee shop owner had come outside now. She was a small woman with gray hair. She knew Jason as a regular customer. "Is everything okay, Mr. Statham?" she asked, looking worried. "Not yet," Jason answered, his eyes still on Mike. "But it will be." Mike swallowed hard. He was starting to realize that kicking those dogs might have been the biggest mistake of his life. And from the look in Jason Statham's eyes, he was about to find out exactly how big a mistake it was. The crowd around Jason and Mike grew larger. People stopped walking and formed a circle around them. Some held up their phones to record what was happening. No one wanted to miss seeing the famous Jason Statham in real life, especially when he looked so angry. Mike looked at all the people watching. He felt trapped. This was supposed to be a simple joke, just something to make his friends laugh. Now it was turning into a big problem. And worse, people were recording everything. "Listen," Mike said, trying to sound friendly. "I made a mistake. Let's just forget about it, okay?" He held out his hand for Jason to shake. Jason ignored Mike's hand. Instead, he bent down and picked up Bella, the smaller dog. He checked her side where Mike had kicked her. The dog whimpered a little when Jason touched that spot. "She's hurt," Jason said, looking up at Mike with cold eyes. "You hurt my dog." Mike's friends had now moved even farther away. Tom, who had been Mike's friend for 5 years, got on his motorcycle. "Hey, where are you going?" Mike called to him. "Sorry, man," Tom said. "This is your problem, not mine." He started his motorcycle and drove away. The other three bikers looked at each other, then did the same thing. Within seconds, all of Mike's friends were gone, leaving him alone to face Jason. The coffee shop owner, whose name was Mrs. Chen, came closer. "Mr. Statham, should I call the police?" she asked, holding her phone ready. Jason thought for a moment. "Not yet," he said. He put Bella back down gently. Both dogs stayed close to his legs, as if they felt safe there. "Here's what's going to happen," Jason said to Mike. His voice was low, but everyone could hear him in the silence that had fallen over the crowd. "First, you're going to say sorry to my dogs." Mike's face turned red. "You want me to apologize to dogs?" he asked, not believing what he heard. "Yes," Jason said simply. "Then you're going to make a donation to the animal shelter down the street, a big one." Someone in the crowd clapped. Others nodded in agreement. Mike looked around at all the faces watching him. Most looked angry at him. Some were smiling, happy to see him in trouble. He felt sweat on his forehead, despite the cool air. "And if I don't want to?" Mike asked, trying one last time to sound brave. Jason took a step closer. Now he was so close that Mike could see the color of his eyes. They were hard and serious, just like in his action movies right before he beat up the bad guys. "You don't want to find out," Jason said quietly. A girl in the crowd shouted, "Make him say sorry, Jason." Others joined in, calling for Mike to apologize. Mike felt his heart beating fast. He had two choices. He could try to fight Jason Statham, a man known for doing his own stunts and martial arts, or he could do what Jason asked and be embarrassed in front of all these people. Fighting didn't seem like a good idea. Jason was shorter than Mike, but his arms and chest were much stronger. Mike had seen Jason's movies. He knew what those fists could do. "Fine," Mike said at last. His voice sounded weak even to himself. "I'll say sorry to your stupid dogs." Jason's face got even darker. "They're not stupid, and you'll speak to them with respect." The crowd had gotten even bigger now. A man in a suit who had been walking by stopped and recognized Jason. "Hey, aren't you Jason Statham?" he asked loudly. "Yes, he is," answered a woman nearby. "And this jerk kicked his dogs for fun." More angry looks turned toward Mike. He had never felt so alone and in trouble before. His tough biker image was falling apart in front of everyone. And the worst part was still to come. He would have to get on his knees and talk to dogs like they were people. Mike stood there sweating as more people joined the crowd. Someone shouted, "It's Jason Statham." Another voice called out, "That guy kicked his dogs." The story spread quickly through the growing crowd. "Get on your knees," Jason said to Mike. His voice was calm but firm. Mike looked around one more time, hoping to find a way out of this mess, but there was nowhere to go. The crowd had formed a tight circle around them. Some people had angry faces. Others looked excited to see what would happen next. "You want me to get on my knees? Here, in front of everyone?" Mike asked, his voice cracking a little. "Yes," Jason replied. "Right now." A tall woman near the front of the crowd spoke up. "I saw the whole thing. He kicked both dogs when he thought no one was looking." She pointed at Mike with an angry look. "He did it twice." More angry voices rose from the crowd. Mike felt his face burn hot with shame. He had never been in a situation like this before. Usually, people were afraid of him. They moved out of his way when they saw him coming. Now everyone was against him, and his tough guy image was falling apart. Slowly, feeling like each movement was hard to make, Mike lowered himself to his knees on the sidewalk. His jeans scraped against the rough concrete. He was now eye level with the two small Yorkshire Terriers who were staying close to Jason's legs. "Say it," Jason ordered. "Say you're sorry to Max and Bella." Mike looked up at Jason, then at the crowd, then down at the dogs. This was the most embarrassing moment of his life, and it was all being recorded on dozens of phones. "I'm sorry," Mike mumbled, looking at the ground. Louder, Jason said. And look at them when you say it. Mike raised his eyes to look at the two small dogs. They looked back at him with what seemed like confusion in their little eyes. I'm sorry I kicked you, Mike said, louder this time. I'm sorry, Max and Bella. The crowd was quiet now, watching closely. Some people were smiling, happy to see justice being done. Mrs. Chen, the coffee shop owner, had a satisfied look on her face as she watched from the doorway. Good, Jason said after a moment. Now stand up. Mike got to his feet quickly, brushing dirt from his knees. He felt a small bit of relief that the worst part might be over, but Jason wasn't finished yet. Take out your wallet, Jason told him. Mike's relief disappeared. What? Your wallet, Jason repeated. Take it out. Slowly, Mike reached into his back pocket and pulled out his worn leather wallet. He held it tightly in his hand. Open it, Jason said. Mike opened his wallet. Inside was about 200 pounds in cash. It was all the money he had until payday next week. Take out all the money, Jason ordered. People watched closely as Mike removed all the cash from his wallet. His hands were shaking a little now. Down the street is an animal shelter called Paws and Care, Jason explained. We're going to walk there together, and you're going to donate that money. Mike looked at the cash in his hand. It was supposed to last him the whole week. He needed it for food, for gas, for beer. All of it? He asked weakly. All of it, Jason confirmed. Consider it the price for your joke. A man in the crowd called out. Make it a lesson he won't forget, Jason. Jason nodded at the man, then turned back to Mike. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Your choice. Mike thought about running. He thought about fighting. But deep down, he knew both options would only make things worse. If he ran, the videos would still be online. Everyone would see what he did. And if he tried to fight Jason Statham, well, that would probably end with him in the hospital. Fine, Mike said at last, his voice quiet and defeated. Let's go to the shelter. Jason patted both his dogs gently on their heads. Good. Mrs. Chen, would you mind watching Max and Bella for a few minutes? Of course, Mr. Statham, the coffee shop owner said with a smile. I'll take good care of them. Jason handed the leashes to Mrs. Chen, then turned to Mike with a stern look. Let's go, and don't try anything stupid. Jason and Mike began walking down the street with the crowd following behind them. Many people were still recording with their phones. Some had even started live streaming what was happening. By now, thousands of people online were watching the famous actor and the biker who had kicked his dogs. This isn't fair, Mike said as they walked. It was just a small kick. The dogs are fine. Jason stopped walking and turned to face Mike. First, they're not fine. Bella is hurt. Second, what kind of person kicks animals for fun? What does that say about you? Mike had no answer. He looked down at the ground. And third, Jason continued, if I hadn't been there, would you have stopped at just one kick? Or would you have kept hurting them? People in the crowd nodded. A young woman spoke up. He's right. Animal abusers often start small and get worse. Mike felt trapped by the truth in Jason's words. He had kicked the dogs to look tough in front of his friends. If Jason hadn't shown up, who knows what might have happened next? They started walking again. Mike felt strange walking next to the famous movie star. In any other situation, he might have asked for an autograph. Now, he just wanted to get away as fast as possible. So, you're a biker, Jason said as they walked. Is that your thing? Riding motorcycles and kicking small animals? No, Mike said quickly. I mean, yes to the motorcycles. No to the animals. I don't usually. It was just today. I was showing off. Showing off by hurting something smaller than you, Jason said. That's not showing off. That's being a coward. The word coward hit Mike hard. No one had ever called him that before. In his biker gang, he was respected, even feared. But now, walking through London with money in his hand that he was about to give away, he did feel like a coward. They reached the animal shelter after a 5-minute walk. It was a small building with pictures of cats and dogs in the windows. A sign above the door read Paws and Care Animal Shelter. A small bell rang as they entered. The crowd stayed outside, peering through the windows. Inside, a woman with gray hair sat behind a desk. She looked up when they entered and her eyes grew wide when she recognized Jason. "Mr. Statham, what a lovely surprise," she said, standing up quickly. "Hello, Margaret," Jason replied with a small smile. "This man has a donation he'd like to make." Margaret looked at Mike with curiosity. "That's wonderful. Every little bit helps our animals." Mike stood there awkwardly, still holding his money. He didn't move. "Go on," Jason said firmly. "Tell her why you're donating." Mike swallowed hard. I kicked some dogs. As a joke. But it was wrong. So I'm giving this money to help animals." Margaret's friendly smile disappeared. She looked at Mike with disapproval. "I see," she said coldly. She put a donation box on the counter. "All donations are appreciated, even from people learning their lessons the hard way." Mike slowly put his cash into the box. It was all the money he had. He watched it disappear into the slot with a sinking feeling in his stomach. "How much was that?" Jason asked. £200, Mike answered, his voice low. Jason reached into his own pocket and pulled out his wallet. He took out several bills and put them in the donation box too. "And here's another 1,000 from me," he said. Margaret gasped. "Thank you, Mr. Statham. This will help so many animals." "It's nothing," Jason said with a smile. "I like to support good causes." Mike felt even worse now. Not only had he lost all his money, but Jason had shown him up by giving 5 times more, and he had done it with a smile, like the money meant nothing to him. As they turned to leave the shelter, Jason looked at Mike with serious eyes. "Lesson learned?" he asked. Before Mike could answer, the door to the shelter burst open. A man with a professional camera rushed in. "Jason Statham, can I get a comment about what happened with your dogs today?" he asked excitedly. Mike realized with horror that this was just the beginning of his problems. The reporter pushed his way into the small animal shelter. He had a big camera in his hands and a press badge hanging from his neck. Behind him, 2 more people with cameras entered. One of them was already filming. "Jason Statham, what happened today? We heard someone attacked your dogs," the first reporter asked, holding out a small microphone. Mike tried to turn away from the cameras, but it was too late. They had already seen his face. A woman reporter pointed at him. "Is this the man who hurt your dogs?" she asked Jason. More people from the crowd outside were now coming into the shelter. The small room was getting packed. Margaret, the shelter worker, looked worried about all these people in her space. "Please," she said. "Not everyone can come in at once." Jason held up his hand, and everyone got quiet. He had that effect on people. When Jason Statham spoke, people listened. "Yes, this man kicked my dogs earlier today," Jason said calmly. "But he has just made a donation to this animal shelter as a way to make things right." All the cameras turned to Mike. He felt the hot lights and saw the lenses pointing at him. His face would be on the news. People would see him. People would know what he did. "What's your name?" a reporter asked Mike. Mike didn't want to answer, but with all these people watching, he felt he had no choice. Mike Johnson. "And why did you kick Mr. Statham's dogs, Mr. Johnson?" The reporter continued. Mike looked at the floor. "It was a stupid joke. I was showing off to my friends." "Do you often hurt animals for fun?" another reporter asked. "No," Mike said quickly. "I don't. I mean, I never did before. I don't know why I did it today." The questions kept coming. Mike felt like he was being attacked from all sides. Each question made him look worse and worse. "That's enough," Jason said after a few minutes. "Mike has made his donation and apologized to my dogs. I think he's learned his lesson." Mike felt a small bit of relief. Was Jason Statham actually defending him now, after everything? But then Jason added, though I do hope this serves as a reminder to everyone that animal abuse is never acceptable. Not as a joke, not for any reason. The reporters nodded and wrote down Jason's words. They seemed to like this quote. Margaret spoke up from behind her desk. If anyone else would like to make a donation while you're here, we always welcome support for our animals. Several people from the crowd immediately came forward with money. They wanted to be part of this story too. They wanted Jason Statham to see them helping animals. Mike stood awkwardly to the side. He didn't know what to do now. Could he leave? Or did Jason still have more punishment planned for him? As if reading his thoughts, Jason turned to Mike. You can go now, he said. But remember this day. Remember how it feels to be embarrassed and scared. That's how animals feel when people are cruel to them. Mike nodded. He just wanted to escape. He pushed his way through the crowd toward the door. One more thing, Jason called after him. Mike stopped and turned around. What now? Your motorcycle, Jason said. It's parked illegally. You should move it before it gets towed. Mike had forgotten all about his motorcycle. It was still parked outside the coffee shop, 5 minutes away. With all that had happened, his bike had been the last thing on his mind. Right. Thanks, Mike mumbled and hurried out the door. As Mike left the shelter, he heard a reporter ask Jason, will you press charges against him? Mike didn't hear Jason's answer. He was already hurrying down the street, trying to get away from the cameras and the crowd. But deep down, he knew it was too late. The damage was done. His face would be all over the internet by tonight. Everyone would know what he did. Everyone would see him on his knees, apologizing to dogs. His tough biker image was ruined forever. And the worst part, he had no one to blame but himself. Mike walked quickly through the streets of London. He kept his head down, hoping no one would recognize him. But it seemed like everyone was looking at him. A teenage girl pointed at him and whispered to her friend. An old man shook his head as Mike passed by. That's him, Mike heard someone say. That's the guy who kicked Jason Statham's dogs. News traveled fast in the age of cell phones and social media. Mike took out his own phone to see how bad it was. The first thing he saw was a message from Tom, his friend who had left him earlier. Dude, you're all over the internet. What were you thinking? Mike checked Twitter and saw that hashtag #dogkicker and hashtag Jason Statham Justice were trending. There were already video clips of him kneeling in front of the dogs. Someone had even made a meme of his face with the words "Pick THE Doduar Alming Doggies Till Kick" written across it. When he reached the coffee shop, he was relieved to see his motorcycle was still there. He just wanted to get on it and drive far away. But as he approached, he saw Mrs. Chen standing near his bike, holding Max and Bella on their leashes. They're waiting for Jason to return, she explained when she saw Mike. He's still at the shelter. Mike nodded and walked past her to his motorcycle. He felt the two small dogs watching him. Their eyes seemed to follow his every move. He felt guilty all over again. I really am sorry, he said quietly to the dogs. Mrs. Chen raised her eyebrows but said nothing. Mike got on his motorcycle and started the engine. As he was about to drive away, his phone rang. It was his boss from the auto repair shop where he worked. Mike, his boss said when he answered. I just saw you on Facebook. Tell me it's not true. I can explain, Mike started, but his boss cut him off. You kick dogs. For fun. And they belong to Jason Statham. His boss sounded angry. Do you know how this looks for the shop? I made a mistake, Mike said. I paid for it too. I had to give all my money to an animal shelter. That's not enough, his boss replied. People are already saying they won't bring their cars to a shop that employs animal abusers. I've gotten 3 calls already. Mike felt sick. What are you saying? Don't come in tomorrow, his boss said. Or the next day. In fact, don't come in at all until I figure this out. The call ended. Mike sat on his motorcycle, feeling worse than ever. Now he had no money and no job, all because of one stupid moment. He drove away from the coffee shop, heading back to his small apartment. The ride that usually made him feel free and powerful now felt lonely. He kept thinking about Jason Statham's words. Remember how it feels to be embarrassed and scared. That's how animals feel when people are cruel to them. When Mike got home, he saw his neighbor Mrs. Harris walking her golden retriever. She usually waved to him, but today she pulled her dog close and crossed to the other side of the street. She had seen the videos too. Inside his apartment, Mike threw his keys on the table and sat heavily on his worn couch. His phone kept buzzing with notifications. More people had seen the videos. More people knew what he had done. He thought about calling his mother, but what would he say? "Hey Mom, I'm famous now because I kicked a movie star's dogs and got humiliated on the internet." She would be so disappointed in him. Mike turned on his TV to distract himself. The local news was on, and there on the screen was his own face. The news anchor was saying his name. Michael Johnson, seen here apologizing to actor Jason Statham's Yorkshire Terriers after kicking them outside a London coffee shop. Mike quickly turned off the TV. There was no escape from what he had done. The whole world seemed to know his name now, but for all the wrong reasons. A text message came through on his phone. It was from his younger sister. "Please tell me that's not you on the news, Mike. Mom is crying." The next morning was even worse for Mike. He woke up to hundreds of messages on his phone. Some were from people he knew. Many were from strangers who had found his social media accounts. Most of the messages were angry. Some people even sent threats. Mike's phone rang. It was his mother calling. "Michael James Johnson," she said when he answered. Her voice sounded tired and sad. "What have you done?" "Mom, I'm sorry," Mike said. "I made a huge mistake." "I raised you better than that," she replied. "Your father and I taught you to be kind to animals. What were you thinking?" Mike had no good answer. He wasn't thinking. That was the problem. "Everyone back home has seen the videos," his mother continued. "Your cousin Becky called me crying. She volunteers at an animal shelter, you know." Mike hadn't known that. He felt even worse now. "I'm really sorry, Mom," he said again. "I'm paying for it now. I lost my job. People are sending me hate messages. I can't go anywhere without being recognized." There was silence on the phone for a moment. Then his mother spoke again, her voice softer. "Maybe this is a wake-up call, Michael. Maybe you needed something big to happen to make you think about your life choices." His mother was right. For years, Mike had been trying to act tough. He joined the biker gang. He got tattoos. He tried to scare people, all to look cool and powerful. But where had it gotten him? Now he was alone in his apartment, afraid to go outside. After talking to his mother, Mike looked at his social media again. It was even worse now. Someone had found his work information and posted it online. People were leaving bad reviews for the auto shop, saying they shouldn't employ animal abusers. Mike felt terrible for his boss. The shop didn't deserve this. He decided to make a public post. "I want to say I am truly sorry for what I did yesterday," he wrote. "Kicking those dogs was wrong. There is no excuse for it. I am not asking for forgiveness. I just want everyone to know that the auto shop where I work had nothing to do with this. Please don't punish them for my mistake. Jason Statham was right to make me apologize. I am sincerely sorry for my actions." He posted it and turned off his phone. He couldn't bear to read any more messages. Mike spent the day in his apartment. He was too afraid to go out. He had no food in his fridge and no money to buy any. All his cash had gone to the animal shelter. He found some old crackers in a cupboard and ate them for lunch. In the afternoon, someone knocked on his door. Mike was scared to answer it. What if it was an angry dog lover coming to confront him? But the knocking continued. Finally, he looked through the peephole. It was his sister, Emily. Mike opened the door. Emily walked in without saying hello. She put a grocery bag on his table. "I brought you some food," she said. Mom was worried you might be hungry. Thanks, Mike said, feeling grateful but ashamed. Emily looked at her brother with serious eyes. You really messed up this time, Mike. I know, he admitted. The internet never forgets, she said. This will follow you for a long time. Mike nodded. He knew she was right. So, what are you going to do now? Emily asked. Mike hadn't thought that far ahead. His life had been turned upside down in just one day. He had no job, no money, and a ruined reputation. Where could he go from here? I don't know, he answered honestly. Emily sat down at his table. Well, you need to figure it out. You can't hide in here forever. Nobody will hire me now, Mike said. Everyone has seen the videos. Then maybe you need to do something to change how people see you, Emily suggested. Mike looked at his sister with confusion. Like what? I don't know, she said, but you need to show people you're not just that guy who kicked Jason Statham's dogs. You need to be something better. For the first time since this all began, Mike felt a tiny bit of hope. Maybe there was a way to fix this. Maybe he could change. A week passed. The worst of the internet storm had calmed down, but Mike was still without a job. His boss had called to tell him that he couldn't come back to the auto shop. Too many customers had complained. Mike spent most days in his apartment, only going out late at night when fewer people were around. But he kept thinking about what his sister had said. He needed to be something better than the guy who kicked Jason Statham's dogs. One morning, Mike woke up with an idea. He got dressed and walked to the animal shelter where he had made his donation. The same place where Jason Statham had taught him a lesson. The Paws and Care Animal Shelter. When he entered, Margaret looked up from her desk. Her face hardened when she recognized him. What are you doing here? She asked coldly. I'd like to volunteer, Mike said simply. Margaret looked surprised. You want to volunteer? Here. Mike nodded. I made a mistake, a big one. But I want to make things right. I want to help animals, not hurt them. Margaret studied his face for a long moment. This isn't some publicity stunt to fix your image. No, Mike answered honestly. No one even knows I'm here. I need to do better. After a long pause, Margaret sighed. We are short-handed. Come back to my office and we'll talk. For the next month, Mike spent every free hour at the animal shelter. He cleaned cages. He walked dogs. He fed cats. The work was hard and sometimes dirty, but he didn't mind. For the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something good. Some of the shelter workers were cold to him at first. They had seen the videos too. But as days passed and Mike kept showing up, they began to warm up to him. They saw how gentle he was with the animals, especially the scared ones. One day, Mike was walking a three-legged dog named Lucky in the park near the shelter. The dog had been abused by his previous owner and was very shy around people, but he had started to trust Mike. As they walked, Mike noticed a black car pull up nearby. A man got out and walked toward them. Mike recognized him immediately. It was Jason Statham. Mike's first instinct was to run away, but he didn't. He stood his ground as Jason approached. Hello, Mike, Jason said calmly. Mr. Statham, Mike replied, his voice shaking a little. Jason looked down at Lucky. Who's this? This is Lucky, Mike explained. He had a rough life. Bad owner, but he's getting better now. Jason bent down and gently offered his hand to the dog. Lucky sniffed it carefully, then allowed Jason to pet him. Margaret told me you've been volunteering here, Jason said, standing up again. Every day for a month. Mike was surprised. You talked to Margaret about me? Jason nodded. I donate to this shelter regularly. I like to check in. She says you're good with the animals, especially the scared ones. Mike didn't know what to say. He hadn't expected Jason Statham to ever speak to him again, let alone in such a civil way. I lost everything because of what I did to your dogs, Mike admitted. My job, my friends, my reputation. But maybe I needed to lose those things. Maybe I needed to find something better. Jason looked at Mike with new respect in his eyes. Not many people actually learn from their mistakes, he said. Most just feel sorry for themselves. They walked together for a while, talking about the shelter and the animals. Before Jason left, he turned to Mike one last time. My new movie is filming soon. We need people to help with the animals on set. The pay is good. If you're interested, tell Margaret. She has my number. With that, Jason walked back to his car and drove away. Mike stood there, shocked. Had Jason Statham just offered him a job? After everything that had happened? As he walked Lucky back to the shelter, Mike thought about how one terrible decision had changed his life. He had lost his old life, but maybe, just maybe, he had found a better one. That evening, when Mike got home, he looked at his motorcycle. He hadn't ridden it since that day. The tough biker image didn't seem important anymore. What mattered now was who he really was, not who he pretended to be. He took out his phone and called Margaret. About that job with the animals on the movie set, he said, I'm interested.